We have like. And it's actually.
All right.
We have a full house this morning, so we're going to everybody. We put on an event just to pull people show up, and this is so that we have a lot of people that show us. Thank you so much for supporting this event, and good morning. So we have people from all over the county. We have people from other counties here visiting us today, but just going to kind of do a little quick introduction here. My name is Brad Nyla. I'm executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. Big Sky Chamber of Commerce for years has hosted this event called Big Station. We dive into a particular topic and spend about an hour and a half talking about that. Our community has multiple topics. That's what today is kind of a fun one to take a deep dive into that. Before we get started, glasses so I can make sure I cover all the important stuff. We want to thank the Yellowstone Club this morning for being our breakfast sponsor. Thank you. There's plenty of food back there, so breakfast. I also need to thank our Chamber staff and the Big Sky Resort Tax District staff for putting on this event. For many of you, you know we have staffers, even Quisenberry, who's been on our staff for years, security for putting on this event. The rest of us on our team didn't ever pay attention, but she always did. Thanking the people at Galveston County Fairgrounds, and we're happy for her, but at the same time, the rest of us we're trying to figure out how to make the ED work. So thank you for this, but thank you for the staff. All right, today we're looking at diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. For some of you, this might be your first introduction to this work, and for others, you might be very well versed. For myself, I had the perception 5 years ago when I first introduced this. I knew what all the issues were. I had grown up in a big city and I assumed I was very comfortable in this space. However, I had the opportunity to just train on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and change my perception on the inequities in our society. About a year ago, the Chamber did a training for the community business partners and launched a working group called Belonging Big Sky. This group is made up of business leaders in our community and has started the process to make sure this community is welcoming as possible. With 3,800 full-time residents and well over 2,000 seasonal workers, our community is definitely diverse, and we want to make sure it's always welcome. Today, we have a esteemed panel of experts who are in our community and in our state who are already doing the heavy lifting in this space. Introduce those folks, but we have them coming up today speaking on our behalf. So our first speaker this morning being Shayla Cox. Shayla is the co-founder of Co-Equity Consulting, a certified diversity inclusion professional with a proven record of providing foundational knowledge and practical frameworks for the education, training, and organizational assessments. Co-Equity Consulting aims to empower racially marginalized individuals and create a society where everyone is valued for their character. Our next speaker will be Anna Brown. Is a principal consultant of Purpose and Performance Group, where her work focuses on leadership development and organizational culture. Anna holds an undergraduate degree in organizational interpersonal communications and studied organizational psychology on the graduate level. Anna also holds a certificate in Foundation for Neuro Leadership. She lives and thrives here in Big Sky and enjoys working with some of our local businesses. Danny Hess is with us this morning. She's supports the city of Bozeman's community engagement and equity work in a role as community engagement coordinator, co-leading the development of the city's first equity and inclusion plan. Danny works with city staff and leadership community members and partners with organizations to chart the course for Bozeman where everyone belongs. Danny is a Montana State University graduate with a bachelor's degree in community health and minor in Hispanic studies. Lakeisha Lyon serves as the city of Bozeman in her role as the social plan for community development department. In addition to her duties in current planning and development review, Lakeisha is co-leading the development of the city's first equity and inclusion plan alongside Danny Hess, other city staff and leadership, community members, and partner organizations. Lakeisha has her bachelor's degree in environmental studies from the Florida State University and a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Central Florida. Then lastly is Dylan Paul Thornton. Dylan has lived in Bozeman for 23 years and worked in Big Sky for 20 of those years. He graduated from Montana State University in 2004, earning a degree in literature and anthropology. He's worked as an archaeologist, industry professional, small business owner, nonprofit professional. Got being a dad, that's really important. And recently founded the Hale Creative Consulting, providing diversity, equity, inclusion solutions for the outdoor industry and community organizations. So full morning of great speakers this morning, and we're happy that you're here. So we're going to kick this off with Michelle Cox.
Like roll myself forward. I feel odd in the corner over here, but I have so many things going on. I can't not have this stand with me. Can we hear me all right?
Yes.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. As I mentioned, my name is Michelle Cox, and I'm the founder of Co-Equity Consulting. And I am here to give us a little bit of a background on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have some shared understanding of language before we dive into talking about solutions to solve inequities in our organizations and in our communities. First, I'd love to share a little bit about myself and my organization. And so with Co-Equity Consulting, I provide trainings and organizational assessments and do leadership training and one-on-one coaching, and really provide a safe space for leaders to ask the questions that are top of mind for them in regards to equity, inclusion, and justice. I really love using a radically human introduction as a way to share a bit about myself, because what we tend to do in a bio or otherwise list qualifications, and that's supposed to explain to you exactly who I am and why I do what I do. That's a small piece of a bigger puzzle that pulls together why I'm here standing in front of you and why I do this work full time. It's because it's my heart speak, and there are different points in my life that have led me to this moment. And so let's just get the professional qualifications out of the way. I am the founder of Co-Equity Consulting. I work for the Montana Racial Equity Project. That's how I first got connected with Big Sky Chamber. And I went to the University of Montana, so go Grizz, and I graduated with my degree in African American Studies, and that really lit my fire with work around racial equity and education and history. I additionally was a fellow with the Western State Center, and I was doing research into white nationalist activity in the state of Montana and collaborating with other fellows from across the nation to try to combat discrimination. I am also a certified diversity and inclusion professional in Cornell University. And so those, they may tell you my professional qualifications, but they don't necessarily tell you why I do this work. I do this work, I come from a mixed race family. My nana is an immigrant to this country, and my dad was in the military, which the mix of all of these gave me the opportunity to really understand life from different perspectives, from people from different walks of life and with different racial identities. This row kind of helps to explain maybe who I am and who my army is behind me outside of the images with my professional qualifications. I didn't end up in African American Studies by accident. I ended up there because I needed the language to understand my experience, and I wanted to obtain the tools I needed to not only protect myself, but future generations. This, of course, led me to pursuing African American Studies, which then led me into doing a lot of advocacy and educational work throughout the state of Montana, which I've been doing for nearly a decade now. This journey of mine has led me to stay in Montana much longer than I ever anticipated and focus on serving my community in ways that I can really align with my values of integrity, equity, growth, and creativity. I do that through hosting events. I've done a TEDx talk. I went and testified before our legislature to combat an anti-DEI bill, similar to some of the things we're seeing down in Florida. And I do research now all over the place, and just got back from New York City doing field research to support residents in understanding their quality of life and what their needs are. I'm going to jump us off with going through some DEI myths. And I'm sure this list is not exhaustive. We've heard lots of different reasons why this isn't something we should be focusing on in Montana, and I would like to take a quick moment to debunk some of those. Although DEI might not be a priority or a value that you strongly identify with, it can have a really positive impact on all members of our community. And regardless of our political affiliation, which I think that our legislature came to understand because they tabled that bill 18-0. And in a country with a history of racial discrimination as ours, it takes intentional efforts to address harm and embrace our fundamental values as Americans, and providing a space for everyone to thrive and feel safe in their country. Let's run through a couple of these really fast for the sake of time. So first, we don't have many people of color. That's POC in Montana. So racism is not an issue. False. So one Black person, it shouldn't take more a Black person being in the room or a person of color being in the room for us to care about issues that impact parts of our community. And though we're a small percentage, that percentage is still actual human beings and a larger number of people. And so it's worth being top of mind for all of us. And in Montana, though we do kind of feel separated from the rest of the United States, we are not exempt from the United States history of discrimination, right? So there is a responsibility we have here. And I would say that it's deeply in alignment with what I've come to understand about Montanans, which is that we want to have enriched communities and we want to support our neighbors. And this is one of the ways that we're able to do that. DEI should live only under HR, absolutely not. It should be its own program within your organization. Sometimes if it's just starting out, it might live under HR, but keeping it under HR makes it so that way it's only a thing to manage employees and not really embedded into the bones of your organization. Unconscious bias training, the foundation of DEI and anti-racism work. Unconscious bias trainings have a questionable history, and when those are coupled with more intentional skill building and education about our history, they can prove to be really valuable. A one-off unconscious bias training is not going to make the change that we deserve to see in our state. You can't change what you can't name, and now we're going to go into naming the things and having an understanding about some of these terms. So these definitions are specifically from Big Sky Chamber of Commerce, and I'm sure we can share a link. If you want to go directly to the page that has their definitions on there. Felt really important for me to center definitions that are used by folks who invited me here, but knowing that in your organization or even in your personal life, you may have different ways that you relate to each of these terms and each of these values. And it's important to consider how you might define some of these terms and how they relate to you. In the spirit of thinking about how they relate, let's think about how they relate to one another. So I'm going to do some word math a little bit on these just to kind of connect how we come to understand how diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging, and accessibility all work together. So one example would be diversity plus inclusion equals equity, right? Simple one. Or maybe equity and accessibility equals belonging, etc. So really thinking about how these terms support one another, and we can't focus on one without bringing the others into the equation. I additionally have some honorable mention definitions that I feel are really important to bring into the conversation. And those are justice, intersectionality, and systems of exclusion. So justice, really thinking about the intentional efforts we make to dismantle systems that may be exclusive or to integrate systems that then promote fairness and equality that we do want to see. Intersectionality, this speaks to how our overlapping identities create a distinct experience. So I am not only Black, but I am also a woman, and those two parts of myself do not live separately, and they're deeply intertwined, and my experiences in the world are impacted by both of those pieces of my identity. I encourage you to look up Kimberly Crenshaw. She has a really great TED Talk and lots of writings where she speaks to why she specifically came up with this term and where it comes from. In the spirit of doing some more math, or word math, let's think about how some of these terms play together. So if we're thinking about intersectionality, it would be a person plus their identity times systems of exclusion. So thinking about how systems of exclusion impact a person based on their identity. Or maybe diversity and inclusion and equity equal justice. Or diversity minus systems of exclusion equals equity. So really starting to consider how all of these terms interact with one another. So I'm going to encourage you all. If I had like all day with you or the whole hour, we would be doing a lot of reflection and care and share and all of these things. But I don't have that time with you, so I would encourage you to take a quick moment and just consider how you would personally define diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and how they relate to you in your personal life and within your professional roles. How do they align or not with your personally held beliefs and values? I'm going to, not quite in this here, but I do want to always be mindful of being really intentional in our diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Sometimes it can tend to be performative or really not serving the populations that we really want to impact. And so with that, I talk about avoiding the feel-good DEI trap, right? We're like, yes, everyone's different and we love differences and diversity of thought and we all feel good when we talk about this. And then we start getting into deeper conversations about historical legacies of oppression and how those impact our systems and our community and how that also impacts our organizational system. And they get really uncomfortable, and sometimes we don't have the skills to dive into these conversations with one another, or to even open ourselves up to talk about our personal experiences or how we align or don't with some of the terms and the values that we shared on the previous slides. And so really what I feel is most important here is to be really intentional about building skills so we can navigate these confusing, sometimes contentious conversations and work together towards a common good. A way that we can do that is through this inclusive leadership continuum. So this is from a consultant, Jennifer Brown, and in her book, Inclusive Leadership. And she talks about it as this like ongoing process. So this idea that first equity is not something that we accomplish, it's not an outcome that we have, and then we mark off the equity box and we like move on to the next thing. It is something that we're continuously trying to live into. Same with being a good leader, right? We don't just like go to one class and say, all right, I'm a competent business leader. Now I can check that off and I'm good to go and I can move forward. It's really about a continuous learning process and being open to new information and also accepting other folks' personal experiences as fact and as a way to empower them for what they need for themselves. So our first step, maybe we're starting in as we're not fully aware, we may not know all the terms or have done any work to understand how they relate to us personally, but we want to embrace it, right? And so we start maybe doing some self-reflection, like the questions I gave you on the previous slide. And then we're like, yeah, I'm in it. And this is really important to me. And I really want to have these conversations with my team, with my friends, with my colleagues, with my family. And so this is where we move into trying to empower others to go through their own journey. So we have a sense of awareness. And then we want to bring everyone together towards a common good. And so this is where we get active. And this is where, you know, in the aware phase, we kind of get like antsy and like, oh, I know all this information. And I'm like maybe talking to my friends about it. And now we need to do something. And we like put it into action. And that's where we're getting into step 3. And then we start to think about what does it look like when this is common practice and we don't have to continuously bring up equity, inclusion, and justice and have these conversations, but rather it is something that is deeply embedded into our everyday language, processes, and organizational structure. And it's ongoing, and measurement is the key. And I know we'll have someone touch on that a little bit later. Thank you for taking a moment with me to very, very briefly run through some really important terms and values that can kind of help set us for the rest of the speakers today. I will be here for a little bit after if you have any questions, and feel free to get connected in any way you see fit. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm gonna have to do this. All right. Welcome. I'm Hannah Broderud, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about the value of belonging and having an inclusive culture in our workplaces and organizations. So thank you, Michaela, for giving us that shared language, kind of explaining some terms and why we use all these different letters and acronyms, right? They're important concepts to include, right? I could easily make the business case for why diversity matters in a business, right? There's all kinds of great outcomes of better business outcomes, more innovation, more openness to new ideas, right? When we have diversity. I'm going to focus specifically today about inclusion and belonging. So just a little bit about me, like Michaela, I wanted to share a little bit more of the human side of why I do the work that I do. My professional passion is to create more human organizations, right? Organizations where leaders at all levels recognize the power of belonging and human connection. My personal purpose is I see it as bringing out the best in others. And so I look for light, I look for greatness. I invite greatness to grow in the people I work with and individuals that I come into contact with. Some of my personal pursuits is I've rerouted here in Big Sky. I'm originally from Oslo, Norway. So I also have my own story of finding belonging and connection in a new culture and a community. And I still love a good adventure, right? So some of the personal pursuits I'm working on, becoming a better skier, skiing steeper and more varied terrain. And I love to run in the mountains. So I love being here. As an organization, Purpose and Performance Group, we see our purpose as creating thriving communities by activating and operationalizing shared purpose. And there's power in that. You have a little card on the front of your desk here. I'm going to be referring to this model in my presentation.
Did you ask?
There's questions that come up or ideas, and as you hear what we're sharing here today. All right, so imagine that you were invited to a party. All the coolest people you know are going to be there, and just landing this invitation has got you all jittery with nerves and excitement. Are they going to like me? Will I know how to be and what to do around these people? Will I fit in? So you get there all dressed up, and it becomes clear immediately that everybody knows each other already. And you're kind of looking around, and as soon as the music starts playing, everybody heads to the dance floor. And it turns out this is a social dance. Everybody seems to know what to do. They grab a partner, they start dancing, they dance right past you. And you're standing there on the sidelines and feeling ambivalent. Part of you really wants to join the dance. The other part of you just wants to run and hide. You're inching your way a little closer, looking to see if anyone's going to make eye contact. Everybody seems so absorbed in their own experience. They're looking at each other, their partners, paying attention to the music, the other dancers. So you hang out for a little while, and then eventually you just start to turn around, because clearly nobody even cares that you're there. Nobody certainly seems to want to dance with you. So as you back away, somebody comes walking up towards you. They meet your eye, big smile on their face. Would you care to dance? Oh, I don't know, you say. I don't really know how. That's okay. I didn't know that much about it either when I first started. Come with me, I'll show you. This person is friendly and supportive. They seem to accept you for who you are and how you dance. And you start to relax and think, okay, this could be fun. That's what belonging feels like, right? If diversity is inviting someone new and different to the party, inclusion is asking them to dance. Belonging is when they feel accepted for who they are and for their unique contribution. So we all have those experiences, right? Of being the new person, the different one, the one that doesn't necessarily fit in. And then there's that one person that shows up, invites us, right? If we're lucky, we have that experience. So it's not enough to invite people to the party. It's not enough that we've invited all these people here to Big Sky to work in our organizations. It's not enough that we've invited them to come here to visit, to ski, to come live here. If we don't invite them to dance, if we don't invite them to be part of what's going on, exclusion happens. That feeling of exclusion is a result, right? Whether it's accidental or intentional. Inclusion by default doesn't really work because unless invited, unless we're asked, we don't necessarily assume that we're included. We don't necessarily assume that we're part of what's going on, right? So inclusion is that act of inviting someone in, asking them to engage with us. So we're going to look at how this matters in businesses. The purpose to profit process is a chain of events that starts with a shared purpose. Revenue growth, profitability in business is an outcome of this chain of events, right? So the two dark blue circles here are outcomes. Employee engagement is an outcome of the employee experience, right? So the light blue circles are the things that have to be in place for the outcomes to happen. So I'm going to focus on the four antecedents, the four elements that have to be in place in order for us to have a positive experience at work that leads to employee engagement. But first, let's look at what engagement actually is. So if you look at this yellow dotted line here, those are the minimum requirements for the job, right? The have to curve, that red curve, that's like the bare minimum that we have to do to not get fired from our job. And for all of you employers in the room, you know you don't really want people that try to just get away with doing the bare minimum, right? We would love to have people that are engaged. And I'll show you some specific numbers of how much engagement impacts our profitability. So that blue curve, the want to curve, and that gap between the have to curve and the want to curve, that's engagement, right? And that's our discretionary effort. And as employers, we have to earn that. We have to earn the discretionary effort, right? We pay for the have to. We have to earn the want to. So how do we earn the want to from our employees? Here's some correlations, and there's some pretty staggering statistics here. This is research done by the Gallup organization. Business and work units that have high engagement versus work units that have low engagement. 80% lower absenteeism. It's pretty astonishing, right? When we want to be at work, we show up more. Hello. Look at the safety incidents, quality impacts, right? We all want those things to be high, 23% higher profitability. So when people feel like they belong, they want to be part of what's going on. We all do that, right? We want to give more of ourselves. We want to give our full selves, more of our creativity, more of our energy, more of our discretionary effort. And it has these kind of impacts. So think about that for your organization. How do we translate these percentages into real numbers, right? They're real dollars that are impacted by this. So again, why belonging matters at work. This is an article that was published in the Harvard Business Review before the global pandemic, right? It starts with this statement: social belonging is a fundamental human need hardwired into our DNA. And yet 40% of people say they feel isolated at work. And the result has been lower organizational commitment and engagement. In a nutshell, companies are blowing it. US businesses spend nearly $8 billion each year on diversity and inclusion training that miss the mark because they neglect our need to feel included. So let's just think about that, right? It's not enough to have a diversity initiative, to have a one-off unconscious bias training, right? We have to invite people, ask them to dance, to engage with us, to be part of what we're doing. So cultivating belonging is really what makes DEI real. It's what activates it. So a lot of, well, all businesses, we really focus a lot on the right side of this chain, right? We care about the products and services we provide. We measure customer satisfaction, we pay attention, we want to build loyal customers, and obviously we want our revenue to grow, right? Where attention and intention goes, energy flows. So if we focus energy and attention and intention on the left side of this chain, there's energy that fuels this entire chain. Everything on the right becomes a lot easier and a lot more, it works a lot better, right? Because the customer experience is directly impacted by the employee experience. So how can we best cultivate belonging at work? So I'm going to share just some quick points here. And if you want to share them with you. But the four areas that we looked at, right, that's in our model: value alignment. Involve your team members in developing and communicating your organizational values. Demonstrate how the organization's values are put into practice. Are they just words on a wall, or are we actually living our values? And how do we get intentional on our values? Use storytelling to share, create a shared sense of purpose and meaning around those values. Organizational support. Do we provide training, resources, technology to support our team members? Are we creating a culture that supports work-life balance, flexibility, and wellness? And then, do we value team members, team member well-being as a key driver of organizational success? Right? The big takeaway here from what I've shared so far is that what's good for people is good for business. Organizational participation. Involve team members in organizational activities and decision-making. Actively encourage them to share their ideas and suggestions. And create opportunities for team members to connect and collaborate with one another. So the big takeaway here is when we feel like we have a voice in decisions that impact us, we are engaged. We feel like. And then fairness, when we feel treated fairly and equitably, we are more engaged. Right? Ensure that your compensation and promotion opportunities are fair, of course. Apply policies and practices consistently. There's no faster way for people to disengage. And if you are inconsistent, if you have a policy and you don't apply it, and then create a culture that values diversity and inclusion and actively works to eliminate bias and discrimination. So when we feel excluded from something, whether it's intentional or unintentional, it registers as pain in the human brain. And the brain can't differentiate between social pain and physical pain. It registers the same way as physical pain. What do we do when we feel pain? Either we lash out or we withdraw, we disengage, right? So if we want people to feel engaged, let's make sure they don't experience pain, right? The pain of even accidental exclusion. So we're going to dive more into belonging in an upcoming workshop hosted by the Chamber of Commerce. It's coming up on June 22nd. So I wanted to just bring your attention to that before I close. We're going to look at this model of belonging to self, belonging to the now and belonging to the we. It's focused on building belonging inside your community. And so I'd love to see all of you there. You can go on the chamber website and learn more about that. And then if you want to learn more about us, we have a leadership podcast every Tuesday. There's a new episode, Magic in the Room for Intentional Leaders, where we talk about a lot of these topics. If you want a copy of my slides today, feel free to email me. And I'm around too a little bit later if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Oh, good luck.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Danny Hess, and I use she or they pronouns, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at the City of Bozeman. And we are here to talk a little bit about our efforts within the city and the broader community at large down the highway here.
Sorry, we're having technical issues here.
You do, yeah, all the understanding in the world from the front of the room here. All right, so Nikisha, maybe I'll just turn it over to you for an introduction. See that? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nikisha Lane. I'm an associate planner with the City of Bozeman. So if you've ever tried to get a built-in permit in Bozeman, maybe I helped off, so I apologize. So yeah, I'm co-leading this from Danny. Also, I am from Floridian. I come east. I come drive. So for this day, welcome.
So our efforts in Bozeman are called Belonging in Bozeman, and this is a fantastic coincidence, unbeknownst to us. And as I was getting further and further into this work and building relationships with folks in other organizations, Dylan and I connected, and he told me all about the Belonging in Bozeman effort. And the fact that we are both centering our efforts on this word belonging, and we heard some from Hannah about the importance of this word and Michaela as well. I just think it's this great sort of convergence in our region around diversity, equity, and inclusion work, but coming from this community. So with that, we'll get into it. All right, so here is just a quick overview of where we're headed in the next 10 minutes. How did we get here and what's the why behind this work? An overview of our recent and continued efforts, introducing the team and all of the many players who are involved in the work down in Bozeman, and then what our equity and inclusion plan encompasses and how you can get involved. Do I have the magic touch?
What's going on here?
Thanks, Anna. Okay, here we go.
So about 3 years ago, there was a lot of racial injustice within our nation, particularly the murder of George Floyd. So there were a lot of outcries from communities to respond. And so with that, city management created the Inclusive City Report. This report is an internal review of the city's policies and procedures in specific areas in regards to the treatment of minorities, the de-escalation policies, use of force, the police, as well as our citizen appeal process in comparison to national best practices and standards. And so this report includes about 24 action items in regards to reforming existing policies within the city of Bozeman, as well as creating new policies with a focus on welcoming and embracing and respecting diversity within our organization. So as you can see on the screen, the majority of those action items have been completed by the city of Bozeman, or they are ongoing efforts in progress in the city.
All right, and those two lonely ones in red are actions that will be wrapped into this equity and inclusion plan that we're embarking on. So we're excited to continue this work moving forward. Okay, so what's the why behind this work? We always sort of ground ourselves in this statement at the bottom of the screen here to guide our conversations around this topic. So really our goal is to ensure that every resident, visitor, and City of Bozeman employee feels welcomed, valued, and like they can thrive regardless of their rate, identity, or life circumstance. So that's where we start when we're talking about this work. We also ground ourselves in the data. So the city conducted this equity indicators project in 2021 to start all of these community conversations and look at what data we had to characterize disparity and inequity in our community. So this one is familiar to all of us, right? And here in Big Sky as well. Housing cost burden is huge, and we see inequities within this indicator. So housing cost burden means that you spend 30% of your income or more on housing costs. And we see that folks who rent or folks at the lower end of the income spectrum are almost 3 times as likely as homeowners or folks of higher income to experience housing cost burden. We also see households that are headed by people of color overrepresented in those renter and lower income brackets. All right, so here's just a highlight reel of some progress that we've made more recently following that equity indicators report, following the inclusive city work that Nikisha kicked off with. We've chipped away at progress in a number of different areas of the city. So I'll just focus on these last ones. We've got our 180 staff trained in these DEI foundations, right? That's one tiny step of the process that we hope to build from. We established an internal belonging in Bozeman team, which is an internal team of staff from all across city departments to guide this work from the inside out. I'm really excited that we've hired these community liaisons to help guide this work externally and be the bridge between the city of Bozeman and those underrepresented communities as we're developing this plan. And then more recently, in the beginning of March, we launched the process to develop the plan. He's going to touch on it.
Thanks, Danny. So just focusing on our team, we have these internal and external, a huge group of people working on this, which is super exciting. So internally, Danny and myself are co-leading these efforts for the development of the city's equity and inclusion plan. We also have about 20 amazing staff members within the city of Bozeman that have stepped up. They span across all of the departments of the city. They're in various roles of city as well as leadership within the city, and they're going to be assisting us really hands-on with organizing community engagement events, doing research, data analysis, and then providing feedback and advising on the creation of the plan. We will be working on this with the Morton Group, which is the consulting group that we have hired. They're based out of Chicago. And they have over 21 years of experience in racial and sort of equity inclusion work and research. So they're going to be helping us complete and write this plan. And they have ties with Montana and the city of Bozeman, previously working with us for our community roundtable event that we had. With that, as Danny mentioned, we do have the community liaisons that we've hired on a short-term basis. So there's short-term workers in the city. There are 3 of them. They're super awesome. And so they're going to be actually working on specific community engagement projects and going and looking at the communities that they identify with that have been identified as the communities that have the most food within our gaps. Externally, Danny and myself, we created an external steering committee that is comprised of over 20 representatives from local and regional partners within the Gallatin Valley. They'll be serving to provide their expertise and helping us with the development of the plan, providing specific recommendations on the visions, the goals, and the actions of the equity and inclusion plan. And the Big Sky Chamber is one of those representatives, which is so awesome. So we're so happy to have them on the committee. And then lastly is our Economic Vitality Board, which is a board within the city of Bozeman. The DEI efforts are on them, but they're going to be
So lots and lots of players in the mix here. We really want to make sure that as we develop this plan, that the recommendations and the actions are rooted in the lived experience and the expertise of a lot of different folks across the community. We know that we're not going to solve the housing crisis with this plan, but again, we just want to make sure that we're taking the next step in the right direction that are really rooted in the awareness of inequities and striving towards the Bozeman where everyone belongs. So there are sort of two components to this plan. The city of Bozeman, sort of, we described it as like the city, a little c, the organization itself, a lot of the recommendations and the actions in the plan are going to be internal, right? Like how can we improve the things that we do internally as an organization to make sure that employees feel like they belong and that we're offering city services in an equitable way. And then the Bozeman community, some of the recommendations in the plan will be touching on topics that we don't have direct control over from the city of Bozeman. So things like the education or healthcare sector, we're really relying on those partnerships, folks on the steering committee to pick up and run with some of those recommendations.
Thanks, Danny. And so just kind of focusing on the scope and the purpose of the equity and inclusion plan, it's really rooted around 4 main objectives that we want to see within this plan. First, it's about telling the story of what equity and belonging means in Bozeman. And with that, we're really focused on how our past has influenced the present and how we want to show up and forge the way for the future. So with that, we are really focused on creating a historical narrative within the equity and inclusion plan. This is really going to set the stage for telling the true history of Bozeman and the land and its people. So to quote Danny Hess, the history of Bozeman did not start with John Bozeman. So that's really important to remember. So we're going to be working with the Extreme History Group. They're based out of Bozeman, and they're going to be doing a lot of the work to create this narrative for us. The second component of the plan is engaging city staff, our partner organizations, and community members in order for everyone to be involved in the planning process of the plan itself. And then the third is to establish visions, our desired outcomes, and connect those to the equity indicators to make sure that the actions and the recommendations of the plan are data driven, and then establishing the resources that are going to be needed to accomplish those actions, and defining who is accountable, because I think implementation is always the most important thing that gets missed. So who is going to be accountable for the actual success of these specific actions that come out of the plan? And lastly, we want to create a framework for how city staff, partner organizations, as well as community members will implement the equity and inclusion plan, and also setting up an assessment that's going to measure equity and inclusion. So this is going to be a plan that is developed by and for the community. Sorry, quickly. So as Danny mentioned, we did launch our plan in the beginning of March. It was a super successful event. Some of you may have shown up in there, so thank you if you did. We had over 100 folks within the room that came to just hear about our project, what we were doing, and engaging with us.
All right, and we love a good Gantt at the city of Bozeman. So here's just an overview of where we're headed over the next 6 months or so. So some of the different stages in the plan development process here, but we're hoping to really have this thing wrapped up this fall. So yeah, there you go.
And as we said, we want everyone to be a part of this. So we take out your phones or a little later. We'll be here for questions, but we really want to encourage you all to sign up at engage.bozeman.net/belonging. There are so many opportunities for you all to engage, whether it's just taking a survey on getting your feedback on our vision statements that we drafted up, or if you want to host a community chat with your friends, with the community that you're with, and really engage them on this plan. We want you to do that. We need as much help as possible to make this really community driven. So please sign up when you have a moment, and then Danny and myself will be here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
I'm probably the least tech savvy person here, so bear with me. There's a lot of people here. Thank you all for coming. My name is Dylan Hale Thornton. Apparently the clicker doesn't want to work. There we go. I am the founder of Hale Creative Consulting in Bozeman, bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions to the outdoor industry and beyond. I've lived in Bozeman for 23 years, worked in Big Sky for 20 of them in a variety of roles, like Brad said. And so what I'm going to be speaking about today is just giving everyone a general overview of Belonging in Big Sky, a diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiative for Big Sky being led by the Chamber of Commerce. So a year ago, the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce led a diversity, equity, and inclusion workshop that was led by, they hosted a workshop that was led by Michaela and Montana Racial Equity Project. Afterwards, they decided that they really needed to and wanted to engage in DEI work. So they formed a committee that you see here. Everyone was invited, but this was the core group right here. A diverse group because it takes a room full of diverse perspectives to get a clear view of the bigger picture. The chamber then hired me to work as a consultant to help provide direction for the initiative. We met monthly, built out the framework, and now we're ready to share it with the community to get feedback and support and engagement. So, Belonging in Big Sky is a community-wide initiative supporting the diverse communities that live and work in Big Sky through funding for social services and programming, community education and resources, and more events that celebrate and reflect the diversity in Big Sky. So funding, education, and events, those are the main elements of this. By diverse communities, I am referring to any identities outside of the majority by identity markers like race, ethnicity, physical or mental ability, gender, age, size, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, and a variety of other identities. Our mission is to create a sense of belonging so that whether here for a day or a lifetime, everyone in our community feels welcome, valued, respected, and safe. Big Sky is a place of connection with history, the landscape, and each other. And Belonging in Big Sky aims to honor and enhance those connections. And it is a coincidence that we chose the name Belonging in Big Sky and in association with Belonging in Bozeman. It just worked out that way. It makes sense. And it sort of speaks to the importance of belonging. And thinking back on one of Hannah's slides, one of those times when I truly felt a sense of belonging in my community and in Bozeman, where I live, was when I learned about belonging in Bozeman years ago. So hopefully this can provide that sense for other people as well. So why are we doing this? Because everyone deserves to feel welcome, valued, supported, respected, and safe. Now, that is not to say that those things don't already exist, but it is fair to say that we have room for improvement in all those categories, not just in Big Sky or Bozeman, but everywhere, there's this potential. But now, thanks to the Chamber of Commerce, we are taking a formal approach at seeing what that looks like right here in this community. So we've been gathering testimonials this whole time for a year, testimonials and stories from people that live and work in Big Sky from diverse backgrounds. And so I'll share just a few snippets with you here. The problem isn't a lack of affordable housing and childcare. It's a lack of concern and understanding for failing systems, a lack of focus on systemic change. So that systemic change element is really one of those things at the core of DEI work. We are assessing the current systems and trying to figure out how we can make them better. And so this is systems like belief and like personal belief and practice and also systems within our workplaces and our organizations and community services and a variety of systems. So I'll continue here. We need more respect from our employers. We need equal treatment. We want you guys to educate employers how to interact with someone that's not fluent in English. Offer a safe space so that when injustices happen in the workplace, we can go to someone. Employees are too uncomfortable to share their discomfort. It's created this negative loop of mistrust, miscommunication, and understanding. Your employees are physically there, but emotionally they checked out a long time ago, which really speaks to some of Hannah's slides as well, talking about employee engagement, people doing minimum, putting in the minimum effort required. When a Spanish-speaking woman was interviewed in Spanish, she said, "This is the first time in 8 months that I've had a full conversation with someone at work. They only point at where I need to clean." An example of some of the stories that we've gathered. Here's one from just about a month ago, where a Spanish-speaking Big Sky family had no transportation to school or childcare, so they were bringing their 4- and 7-year-old to work with them. 7-year-old had a 50% school attendance rate. The Big Sky Sheriff's Department couldn't find anyone in Big Sky to coordinate help, so they contacted Gallatin County, contacted the city of Bozeman and the Bienvenidos organization, who then reached out to me. So immediately I got on the phone with Danny Hess, and she ended up finding someone in the Bozeman School District to coordinate help for the family that day. So going back to what I was talking about systems, assessing the current systems and figuring out how to make them better, this story illustrates a variety of systems that we could improve on. And finally, these families are the glue that hold our area's economic development and prosperity together by doing the essential jobs that allow our community to function. They deserve the support they need to stay here, thrive, keep their kids in school, and be happy. Otherwise, they will leave and our most important industries could collapse overnight. Obviously, this is not just about trying to keep people here to work. We want people to feel like they are a part of this community, because that importance for diversity extends through all layers of every part of this community and every community out there. So some of the themes that really kept jumping up through all these testimonials that we gathered were the need for language access, better trust and communication, improved social services and support systems, representation and leadership, education for community and business. And so it all kind of illustrated this disconnect between people from diverse backgrounds and the community at large, which also just illustrates the need for connections. And so Belonging in Big Sky is trying to help create more connections through this whole initiative, through funding social services, providing education, and more events. So, you know, I really don't like talking about the business value of doing this work, because my main focus is providing just ethically what everyone deserves, which is fairness and support and safety and feeling welcome. But in providing those things for people, there's this undeniable value for businesses and organizations doing this work. Organizations and communities that invest in DEI work have a proven advantage over those that don't. I'll rattle off a few statistics here from some companies like McKinsey & Co., Deloitte, and Boston Consulting Group. 35% advantage in hiring, 70% more likely to capture new markets, 20% more likely to experience above average profitability, 19% higher revenue due to innovation. Then there's things like the Gen Z factor, ages 11 to 26, the most ethnically diverse generation in the history of the United States. For anyone interested in any ski industry or ski area data, Gen Z makes up the majority of ski area visits nationwide at 35%. That's 21 million ski visits out of 60 million, which is also the majority of spending in the ski industry. Gen Z also makes up a huge percentage of the workforce. in college and young talents. 94% of Gen Z expects companies to take a stand on social issues, and 90% are more willing to engage with companies that do. Whether that engagement is trying to determine who they're going to work for, or what product to buy, or even what community to live in. Social and environmental justice is one of the largest decision-making factors out there today. There's also a ton of outdoor tourism trends that really just indicate the need to address DEI work in all facets of the community. So whether you live in Bozeman, Big Sky, Ennis, West Yellowstone, this affects us all. I mean, nationwide, this affects us all, but I'm really thinking about what makes our area unique here. Just another general look at some of the importance is doing this work. And by this work, I'm talking about that assessing the current systems, figuring out how to make them better in ways that promote fairness, opportunity, access to everyone. So doing this work helps us to build crucial systems of support, create connections that strengthen community, improving business and workplace culture, enhancing tourism, sustainable economic development, protecting the environment, and promoting health and wellness. In my opinion, you can't address any of these issues effectively without talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So some of the current efforts we've made through Belonging in Big Sky so far, just in response to what we've learned in the past year as we've been developing this, are partnerships with organizations like the Migrant Community Coordinators, which consists of 20+ nonprofits and service providers in Bozeman, supporting the migrant community, and partnering that partnership around the SciGaia data analytics project that's based out of Big Sky. That's a wellness data project. And also with the city of Bozeman, the Belonging in Bozeman team handed over their 2 years of equity indicators work for that SciGaia project. And we are, just working with Belonging in Bozeman to help start to bridge our Bozeman and Big Sky communities around supporting everyone. Also, the Chamber of Commerce hired a workforce development coordinator who is supporting the local workforce through a variety of efforts. We are offering a variety of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging resources. We just launched a Belonging in Big Sky web page that has a variety of resources in a toolkit to help individuals and organizations start to engage in this work. Also, a variety of educational workshops, like what Michaela offers. We have a language access workshop later this month. Hannah Bratterwood has the workshop that she spoke about coming up the following month. So just a variety of educational resources. We're also helping to create more arts and entertainment events centered around celebrating the diversity of this area. Sports and rec programming that helps to reduce the barriers of entry to a variety of different sports and outdoor programming. And also advocacy, advocating for funding for essential social services and programming, and also providing representation and a voice for diverse communities in rooms such as this.
We're gonna put mine.
So through a systems-based approach, a systems-based, genuine, forward-thinking approach, Belonging in Big Sky will help maintain a community environment that promotes respect and understanding for the many facets of identity, diversity, and accessibility, individual identity. So this will help ensure the prosperity and sense of belonging for all members of this community now and for generations to come. So I guess the last thing I'll say is that this is not about like going out there and trying to save people or change people's minds. This is about creating connections and creating more effective systems to support individuals and communities and strengthen individuals and communities. So that is what I have for you today. I will also be sticking around and yeah, I'm going to leave a little more time for Q&A here because I hope that I encourage you all to ask questions. We have this amazing panel here. Thank you to everyone who spoke before me for all your work, and thank you to everyone who is here today. So I will hand this back over to the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
The panelists, speakers, please come sit up here and we are now looking for questions. You guys can sit down if you want, or stand, either way. Brad has a microphone. Are there any online, Jenny?
No, I'm not sure how you want to have people ask online.
Either we can read it out loud, or I'd say if they want to unmute their microphone and ask, they can. I know one
Yeah, I
that
can
came
share
up
that.
is for any of you guys, what is a good very first step for businesses to take who want to get started and do it in the right intentional, meaningful way?
Take a crack at it. I would say something that's been helpful in our process at the city is to just identify like who your sort of internal spark plugs are for this kind of work. People who have an interest, people who have lived experience, and people sort of at different levels of influence within your organization who already are walking the walk or talking the talk and want to dig into this stuff. I think that's important to just identify who those folks are and to talk about what that first step might look like.
Yeah, and I would say with that, build it into your business strategy. Right, so it starts with getting clear on the strategy. It shouldn't live in HR, it shouldn't be one person's responsibility to make this happen, right? It should be part of the fabric of how we operate, our entire strategic framework from our shared purpose to our values and commitments that we make to each other, to our strategic objectives.
I think additionally, it's really important. Well, let me say this, when I'm going to work with an organization for an assessment or any education and training, one of the first questions I have is leadership brought into this process? So I'm looking at high levels of leadership to see if there is a commitment behind it in the ways that we share, additionally money to put behind these initiatives, and a team of champions from different areas in the organization. We really want to see that for sure.
Okay, thank you. I'm curious across all these different initiatives, down to a business level or an organizational sort of community level, the co-messaging about language, definitions, what we mean, and are there strategies of using consistency? I think sometimes when this is new for certain people, it can be kind of confusing to navigate. And when you have different terms being used or used in different ways. So can you talk about like a shared messaging strategy or efforts that might be happening regarding that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's really important. And that's also one of those really great first steps is once your organization identifies who really wants to help lead the work within your organization, wherever that may be. One of those first steps is achieving that shared language. And because everybody has a different sort of understanding going into these conversations about what all the terminology means. So yes, creating shared language and shared concepts is essential. And to do that, there's a variety of resources that you could connect to get those definitions on terminology and concepts. And so like in the Belonging in Big Sky webpage toolkit, we have a very simple list of some of those definitions. And also there's a variety of consultants out there who can help guide your organization to create that shared understanding, which is essential before you move on and do anything else. So yes, super important, lots of different resources out there to achieve that.
And all of us are here to help, right? We're part of the community. So each consults in different aspects of this thing, right? Our organization works a lot with leaders and leadership teams and leadership development to create that climate that where these conversations can happen. And similar for everyone from the panel, right? In the audience, Bravo's here. Amazing HR consultant. There's so many resources and people in the community that will be happy to partner with you to help with the education. So
last thing to share is also developing that with your community. So like with Belonging in Bozeman, we have gone out, we've asked our Belonging in Bozeman internal team, what does belonging actually mean to you? What does it mean to the community? We've gone out, we've done a lot of work and engage in the community on that. We're going to continue to do that. So there are a lot of examples and a lot of resources for what these terms already mean. But with some of them, they're gonna, need to be kind of shaded for what it means specifically to that area. So that's another consideration as well.
I just to kind of continue what she was sharing is that when I'm going into the space of the very first thing you do, as I did with Moss today, but typically I won't offer a definition. We will do get people up and moving, and we'll do a gallery walk, and people are providing their understanding of terms and we'll go through it together. And then the definition and the glossary is what that organization wants to give it. So now we know how as a team we define these terms and we have shared language and we built this together. And so now we can use that to embed into your organizational practices for every day.
Awesome. Okay, in the last 2 minutes here, I'm curious if Dylan or if anyone else can add, what are some of the top priority critical needs in the community, who's working on them, and what are the funding needs? How can we start to really make a difference?
Yeah, I would say that some of the basic ones right now that Belonging in Big Sky is working on are the Bienvenidos Family Mentorship Program to serve as resource navigators for Spanish-speaking families in this community. Also, the Thrive Family Parent Liaison Program would be an incredible one to have here in Big Sky. Also, the Bella program through World Language Initiatives is a language education program that has been that is in Big Sky currently, thanks to a grant from the Yellowstone Club Community Foundation. And so looking to keep that program here and expand on it. Those are three of the big ones that we're working on currently. And I mean, there's a variety of issues, obviously. Would you like to talk to some of those issues that you've learned about in the indicators assessment?
Yeah, I would say Dylan really covered the bases, I think, from the the community-based organization side of things, those 4 initiatives are providing essential services to the most marginalized folks in our community. So look them up, Give Big is this week. There's a great opportunity for you to have those services. But from the municipal side, it's like housing and transportation continue to come out on top as the most critical needs for everyone in our community. But the folks who are at the margins experience the greatest burdens in accessing, benefiting from existing housing and transportation resources. So support public transportation, support the Skyline bus system, support the Streamline bus system down in the valley, and support housing initiatives, whether those are coming from local government or organizations like housing authorities or sort of the
Thank you very much. Yes. One more question.
I'm curious, it feels to me like Montana, Idaho, Washington are good targets for white nationalist movements. And how much of your work has been ramped up or born out of this movement that's certainly targeting our area and our, marginalized communities?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We absolutely have. I think the Southern Poverty Law Center most recently tracked like 6 or 7 different racial hate groups in the state of Montana. And a good friend of mine is executive director of Montana's Rights Network, so it's pretty close to home in understanding the impacts of white supremacy and nationalism in our state. One of the ways that I think they're impacting that space is they continuously track what's happening there. Not as familiar with places in Washington, however, in the fellowship, there are folks who work against white nationalism in Coeur d'Alene in those different areas. I think that it feels very central to my work, which is why I focus deeply on racial equity. It's something we have to be really intentional about combating here. In 2020, with the murder of George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, we saw an influx in organizations and individuals who really wanted to be involved in racial equity work, which was really amazing. And then what we saw in the state of Montana was as groups were hosting, Black Lives Matter rallies and bringing community together to address these issues that were harming us from across the nation, was pushback from nationalist groups that would show up at these rallies. So what I thought in those moments was community coming together to support folks who were people of color to get home safely, folks were being targeted. So definitely a very big threat, something we're keeping top of mind, being aware of, following Montana Human Rights Network. They're really fantastic, and they is actually to concern the violence. They share information on that. I think for me, it's mostly about building community and awareness for folks who know that this does occur in our state. But I do think a really amazing high point is that in Bozeman, they pulled together for Black Lives Matter rallies, like 2,000 plus people came together for that rally. That, the handful of Proud Boys that were standing on the corner were not important. Different, but definitely an opportunity to support in the name of Give Big organizations like the Montana Racial Equity Project and others who are looking to fight against racism and the rise of hate in our state.
Okay, thank you all. One last round of applause, please. Thank you again to everyone for coming today, for tuning in online. Just a quick reminder on some of the things that the Chamber focuses on. We always encourage you to come to us with ideas, needs, things you're hearing, seeing. We love connecting the dots, making a difference and an impact in our community for our business community. So please don't hesitate to reach out or ask what we have going on. I did want to highlight a few upcoming events for this year, our signature events. On May 23rd, we have our first ever, hopefully first annual career and summer job fair down at Lone Peak High School as part of our Big Sky Futures program. We do hold quarterly member meetups every 3 months. On June 29th, we're hosting our 26th annual Black Diamond Business Awards dinner up at the Montage. And what I'd encourage you all to do is nominate a business, nominate a person. Those close on May 25th. And then Leadership Big Sky, one of our signature programs, is wrapping up. The cohort this year is graduating next month, and then applications will open in August, and the cohort kicks off in October. So we'd love to have members of the community, anyone who's interested in learning more about how Big Sky works, the ins and outs of doing business in Big Sky. Please apply. And then a plug for Community Week that we do in partnership with Resort Tax is October 2nd through 6th. So mark your calendar now, plan to get engaged, and keep an eye out, stay tuned for what the agenda will hold. Lastly, our business skill building sessions. This is largely in part to the workforce development coordinator that Dylan mentioned that we hired in November, Bethany Davies. She's holding a monthly HR group. Anyone is welcome to join that. But she's also set up a great lineup here with trainings. So please, I guess, check our events calendar. There's some flyers in the back when you walked in that you can grab or take pictures of. The one I wanted to highlight too, I guess Hannah mentioned the Lunch and Learn on June 22nd, but we also have on May 16th, the Roadmap to Language Access with Kendall Levinson of Montana Language Services. So a great way to get your staff involved and learning what's happening and how to kind of approach that. Find out more on our events calendar. Thank you again for coming. We're going to take about a 10-minute break. Joint County Commission meeting will kick off at 10 right here or online. Thank you very much.
Probably a plug while we get everything sorted.